Good evening, everybody, and welcome to What It Takes to Unlock the Potential of AI. This is the first online panel event of 2023 and the fifth event in the 23-24 What It Takes Alumni Speakers Series, organised by our wonderful alumni relations team at Westminster. My name is Gunther Saunders. I've worked at the university for quite a long time. I used to be a teacher. I started out live teaching genetics and microbiology, and then meandered into a role around the use of technology in teaching and learning. And I now am responsible for a fairly largest group of staff at the university who support students and academic colleagues and indeed professional services colleagues in their use of technology in a range of functions. And I've been lucky in recent times to be able to get very engaged with the use of generative AI for a variety of purposes. So I'm very much looking forward to this evening's discussion and the views from our external guests as well. First, that's about me. So first, a little bit of housekeeping. This talk is being recorded, and the recording will be available to you on the Alumni YouTube channel very soon. You'll get sent a link to the channel and some useful resources as a follow-up email, after the event. Your cameras and microphones are automatically turned off, but the live chat is on. So use that chat to ask any questions of our speakers. We'll gather those together after we've had and try to answer as many of them as we can after the panel discussion. Even though the live chat is on, the live recording, the one that goes to YouTube, will not show your chat questions, and it will not reveal your username, so don't worry about that. Please also do bear with us if we have any connection issues. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the internet won't let us down tonight. So let me start now with speaking a bit about the purpose of the discussion this evening, and also then going on to the introducing the panel members and asking them indeed to say something about themselves. So the discussion will try to cover the following themes. Mainly, we'll discuss the current perception of AI in society and how AI is changing the job market, and what new careers are emerging because of AI, and particularly probably because of the explosion that one calls generative AI. The panel will also discuss the potential challenges that AI poses for us all, for society, for all of us. And then the second main thing, we'll tap into what our panel has learned from their experience of using or working with AI to share some practical skills, tips and advice that they have learned as they've begun to engage or have engaged with artificial intelligence in what they do, and also what challenges perhaps they faced as well. As I said previously, we'll then share some useful resources with you before the Q&A, and those resources will come to you in an email as well after the event. Okay, so let me begin now to introduce our panel. I'll say something briefly about them myself from my notes here. First of all, I want to introduce the one I know well, and that's Dr. Doug Speck. Doug is a reader in cultural geography and communication, and he's also assistant head of the School of Media and Communication at the University of Westminster. And he's been working quite closely with me over the past several months to try to help other academic colleagues and professional services colleagues to begin to grapple with the whole explosion that's coming about as a consequence of generative AI and what OpenAI have done in that area. Next, I'm very pleased to welcome Yasmina Kazitani. Since completing an MA in communication in 2013, Yasmina has built up experience in marketing, branding, and business growth, and is currently operating as the Chief Marketing Officer for an AI and gaming Web3 platform called Interverse AI. She's also an active board member for the Blockchain Alliance, which provides education, technical assistance, and advice to government agencies regarding the uses of digital currencies and blockchain generally. And then last but not least, we have Alberto Rey Villaverde. Alberto is a seasoned data technology and AI expert with a track record in leading technology-centric teams across various sectors. including e-commerce, airline travel, technology, and telecommunications. He's implemented advanced algorithmic and analytical methodologies, which has significantly enhanced the digital and data-driven products of companies that he's worked with. Alberto's leadership journey includes transformative roles at Virgin Media O2, where he played a pivotal role in modernizing data practices, and at Just Eat PLC, where he oversaw a large-scale team supporting multiple functions and countries, across countries. Alberto studied data mining MSc at University of Westminster and graduated in 2011. So that's my brief introduction to the panel, who will be discussing things in a little while. But I'd now like to turn to each of them in turn and ask them to say a little bit, give a brief overview of their careers and their journeys from studying at Westminster until now. So perhaps, if it's okay, could I start with you, Alberto, because you're first on my list on the screen.
Yeah, fantastic. Can you see me now? Hear me?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing? Hi, everybody. So yeah, I did data mining in Westminster University. I graduated in 2011, and I did a part-time MSc. And at that point, I was working in EasyJet. The reason I jumped into the MSc back then is because the MSc was 2008, 2011. And the reason that I started MSc is because I was interested in machine learning. And back then, there wasn't such a thing as data science and or things like that. And it was the data mining. It was the closest thing that we had. But obviously, yeah, we had a machine learning and all the different contents in there. And I was really deeply interested about it. My experience took me in EasyJet into playing with databases, and I was I was the first developer of the pricing engine of the company. So if anybody here flew with EasyJet, part of the prices in there are a bit of my fault. And back then I thought that would be super useful, start to introduce machine learning techniques into the algorithms that we had in there. That's how everything started. And then after my end of year project was an algorithm that is still operating today in the pricing engine, and it was very revolutionary, made a lot of millions to the company. It was especially a neural network that was trained on the traders that we had back in there. And that was basically an eye-opener for the company, and I started to basically work on more and more projects where data science could be applied. Later on, I did an MBA in 2013 to 2015 in Cranfield University, and ended up creating the whole data practice and leading it in 2015 in EasyJet. Until in 2018, I was fed up of planes. I couldn't see a plane anymore. I decided to make a change of industry, and that's when I ended up as Chief Data Officer of Just Eat. Food delivery, completely different to planes. Well, not that much, right? Because you take burgers from A to B rather than people, but is slightly different. And technology operation, a lot of management on real time of the different operational processes, super interesting. From a data science perspective, we're using recommenders. We're kind of mapping the sort of flavors that people have, and then we had to surface those ones depending on location, and then the typical courier problem of matching courier A with food, X or restaurant X. And then for the last 3 years was in the telecommunications side with Virgin Media initially, and then supervising the merge with the O2 side, and creating a team from zero, which my first 3 months it was me and myself, to 230 as I was leaving at the end of August, because at the end of August I decided I need a break, and I wanted for me to kind of think about what I want to do next. And the last couple of months I've been not officially working, but playing a lot with the API of OpenAI, to be honest. But yeah, I'm having quite a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, Alberto. But one question I must just ask you, out of curiosity, your first degree, I'm guessing, was computer science. Is that right?
No. I didn't study computer science. I study aeronautic management in Spain in 2001, and by chance I ended up kind of ending up in much interested about machine learning, out of working in EasyJet with databases and that stuff, but no computer science.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's interesting. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on now. Can I ask Doug? Doug, would you like to say something about a brief overview of your career and what you've done at Westminster?
Yes, happy to. Is my video coming on? Yes, it is. There we go. So I used to be a secondary school geography teacher, and then by working in international development, found myself at the University of Westminster to do a PhD. My PhD was examining mapping practices in Tanzania, particularly how the capital city of Dar es Salaam was mapped over the last 10 years by humanitarian organizations. Alongside doing my PhD, I was teaching various things in the School of Media and Communication, and through that found myself as the Director of Teaching and Learning for the School of Media and Communication, and now find myself as the Assistant Head of School for Digital Media Production, which of course overlaps a lot with doing various AI-related things. And so I'm overseeing our large undergraduate digital media BA, which has 4 pathways in it, in journalism, public relations, communication and production, and a selection of our master's courses as well in multimedia journalism, interactive media practice and digital storytelling.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you very much. And to the audience generally, I've known Doug for many years and I've learned more about him in those 3 or 4 minutes than I ever have before. Thank you, Doug. I'm going to move on now, if I may, to Yasmina. Hello, Yasmina. Sorry, I couldn't say hello earlier on. Would you like to say a little bit about your career and how it's progressed since you left Westminster?
Thank you. So, I'm feeling overwhelmed too. It's always a lot of men in AI, data, and everything. So it's kind of like feeling like the only woman. So if you have any student here who are women, don't be scared. It's just like, the first step. Just a bit of the background since I graduated. So just to say that before I graduated Westminster, I worked in marketing, product marketing for over 10 years in car manufacturing. And I felt like I needed like a little bit of communication theory because there was something missing, When you look at the data from a marketing perspective, you feel like there are some elements. And Westminster, during my MA, I had a brilliant interaction with many teachers at the media department to understand the emotional communication, the triggers. So that added a lot in terms of how I moved to my next stage or career move in terms of going into gamification. So everything that you're doing today is gamified, which means that going onto an app from Amazon to Netflix, whichever platform today you're having online, there is a lot of gamification. And that's where I spent my last 15 years doing such in terms of ad tech and everything related to these platforms. And when it came to AI, it was just I would probably say the next easy step, because obviously we have done a lot of data analysis, but what we needed also is to build algorithm to make this gamification useful and put all the factors. I wouldn't say that we emotionally, but we will discuss it later maybe. But this is kind of where the AI is very important from the perspective of building models, is that it helps you laser focus, if I may so, so it's kind of very important. And I think that in the last couple of years, I dedicated more the time and my energy into going into gaming and the blockchain, which is a decentralized way of looking at the data, because we have been consuming data from a centralized point of view from the GAFA, or other parts of platforms such as Meta and so on. And the decentralized part of it was a very important step for me, because you own your data, you can rent it out, you can do whatever you do with it. It's not analyzed the way that it's done today. So here we go.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Yasmina. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Welcome. I'm going to move on now to the kind of first phase of the discussion to the panel, but just to remind the audience that if any questions occur to you as you hear things, do please put them in the chat, and they will be collated, and we'll get to those questions after we've done a couple of rounds of discussion. with the panel. So I'm going to kind of not pick at random because there's only 3 of you. But Yasmina, as you were already had your mic on, although now you turned it off. The first question that I'd like to get the panel to give their views on is around what do we actually mean by artificial intelligence? And the second bit of that question is, why do we need it? You've muted yourself. That's my fault. My fault. I'll let you
Sorry, I don't want to have any noise in the background, but yeah. Well, from my perspective, artificial intelligence is the marketing name or the PR name for, algorithm and statistics, because obviously what happens, and maybe, some people in our panel, one of the panelists can kind of, answer in a more technical side. But the way I see it, it's just building algorithm and statistic models based on certain set of data. So for me, the sexy names is AI. So that's kind of maybe my point of view on that. So I always try to simplify it, because people, when you talk about AI, go to conferences, or even you talk to, I talk to my moms or friends or kids. It's like, they all feel like, oh my God, it's like Skynet. No, it's not yet there. So don't you worry. It's just a bunch of data. The fact that you are going again to do some activities online, going to Netflix, going to Amazon, going to the Westminster dashboards, that as a student, all this are data that you kind of stored somewhere and needs to be, and that's the second part of the question, need to be analyzed from marketeers, business people, financial, whichever data the business people will need it to understand people's behavior, the movements of, some, I would probably say some buying, some selling, whichever industry it is. So we need the AI to help us kind of be like the little hand and the fast hand to make things quicker, because we will need like 10,000 people at the desk to kind of, do the job of an AI or an algorithm that you prompt it. And sometimes it's like within seconds now giving you an answer. So just think of, the AI being the computers when we started with ladies, in these big warehouses or offices, they were typing, and what happened is that computer came and it revolutionized everything. So we didn't need that much people. And AIs, if we have to put a metaphor around it, is the same role at this stage yet. Again, I'm very conscious that we have a lot of involvement in the industry, but for now, this is how I maybe kind of perceive it. I hope that helps.
It does. You said some very interesting things there, which I could pick up on and out of curiosity and interest. But for now, I'll leave it. And if I could ask you, Alberto, the same question. How do you feel about what AI is? Do you agree with the statements that Yasmina has made, or do you see AI in a different way?
No, I'm not. I don't disagree with what Yasmina has said. Right. I think that I also describe AI or artificial intelligence as an umbrella term for a different series of techniques. Right. If I could, deep dive more in the technology, in the technical part, I would say that I would fundamentally split those between rules-based systems and what we see more today, which is machine learning. So when I think about rules-based systems, I think about algorithms defining what is going to be the behavior, right? The algorithm defines the output. If this is bigger than 2, do X. If this is less than 2, do Y. A great example of that would be the Deep Blue tool that in 2000 more or less beat Garry Kasparov on chess, right? It was machine learning, it was a rules-based system, very sophisticated, but a lot of rules at the end of the day. And I think that what is different today with machine learning is that basically, rather than using the algorithm to define the output, use the algorithm to define the model. So use the algorithm to train a model, right? The algorithm is what allows you to create that model that is, well, you could say a fit to a representation or a compression of the data, right? A compression of the wall or that you have in there, and use that model to just basically forecast or predict or build recommenders and that stuff. I would say that what we see today with machine learning, if you go to the extreme, the cutting edge of what is making noise right now with large language model, large language models are just basically compressions of the web and all the text that we have out there, right? Compressions that is not exactly like when we compress video or things like that. We have a bit of loss, but it seems that what it keeps is some sort of model of the world. But yeah, that's as well artificial intelligence, right? Is I would say that artificial intelligence in summary is just the umbrella of all these different techniques.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, very interesting answer. And there's something I want to say there about the difference between rules-based and machine learning, but I might park that until a bit later because it might come out in another way, in a different question. Can I move on to you, Doug? Because you're probably looking at AI from a very different perspective, clearly a different perspective to that which either Alberto or Yasmina are. How do you see AI? What do you say AI is? What do you think of it as being?
I'm probably coming at a slightly different angle, and just seeing those questions in the chat for people asking, do you need to have computer science? Well, I certainly do not. A combination of geography and international development with little or no computer skills at all, I would argue. I think I quite agree with Yasmina's idea that the artificial, or both other people's ideas that artificial intelligence is this sort of catch-all umbrella title for an awful lot of things. I think there's some interesting thoughts and ideas by people like Kevin Kelly, who's the guy who founded Wired magazine and that kind of thing, who talks about artificial intelligence and actually says, is it really artificial intelligence until it thinks differently to humans? And this idea that when it's thinking the same as us, well, then maybe that's just machine learning. But once it can think differently, and I think he calls it alien intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, and that it's not until we get to that bit. And so I think that's something interesting because, I work in the College of Creative Industries and we're in media and communication. Our students are doing lots and lots of creative things. And at this moment in time, AI can't touch our students in terms of being creative. Maybe AI will get to a point of being quite creative. So there's something sort of interesting in there. And I think it's also interesting if you think all the way back to, if you think about creativity and artificial intelligence, if you then think all the way back to sort of the invention of the computer full stop. Of course, old Ada Lovelace, her father was one of the most famous poets, Lord Byron. And the reason she got into computers is because her mother didn't like Lord Byron anymore and said, there's absolutely no way you're going to be doing poetry. And so she got into computers. So there's this tension between creativity and the computer anyway, right back as far as the first computers and Babbage analytical machines and all that kind of stuff. So what's artificial intelligence? I don't really have an answer, but I sort of think that it's not there yet until it becomes something beyond human thinking rather than replicating human thinking, maybe.
That's a very interesting angle, and you end on an interesting point there. And I just, before I move on, which I must move on because I've got a script, I would suspect perhaps once it does get to a point where it doesn't think like humans, that might be a time when we should be slightly more worried, perhaps. But we could park that question as well for later, maybe. Okay, moving on. If I could come back to you, Alberto, and maybe could you say something about what you see the big challenges are with AI, and particularly could you say something about whether you see AI as it currently appears to people? Is it a threat to people's jobs?
Well, perhaps any technology we can see during the last, well, I would say centuries, right, have been a threat towards people's jobs. There were calculators, human calculators, I don't know, 8-9 decades ago, right, just before the computer, and they don't exist anymore. I think that we cannot deny that certain job roles as we know them today will stop. They will not need humans. However, I don't think that means that the person is not needed. I'm very much aligned with the view that artificial intelligence, at least today, is just a tool and nothing more. And like any tool, we need to learn how to use it. The people that were doing the calculation by hand before, or just using logarithmic tables, many decades ago, and then they end up doing the same job, and their time was freed by the use of calculator, is going to be something similar, right? But I think that it has been caught by surprise everybody, because I don't think that people, if you go 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I don't think that people expected that white-collar workers or people in the office was going to be more at risk than of automation than other industries or blue-collar workers, right? So, but I don't see. It's going to be fast. It's going to happen fast. It's going to happen faster than all the things that have happened in the last 3 or 4 decades, and that's going to be the shock. But I think that we start to use it right now. If we get familiar to how this technology works, I think that everybody in their own domain, in their own whatever they are experts on, would be able to understand what is the best use that we can make from these new tools that are coming online, right? That is what I recommend to everybody. Just use it, play with it, and you will see how your own capabilities will be expanded, enhanced, and you are going to be the first one in discovering how to use that tool. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alberto. Yasmina, is there anything you can build on top of what Alberto has said? Is there anything you could add to the challenges of AI?
Yeah. So I would probably say I don't think that we're gonna have this revolution 3.0 happening I agree it's faster, but faster for human being can be 100 years. Why? Because I take my industry, or at least my job as a marketeer. When we started, we only had leaflets. You have to go to the showroom or the shop to see people, and they give you like this bunch of leaflets, and they kind of like give you a lot of information, take your phone, they do cold calling and everything. And then website comes, www. And I remember working at the time for the Nissan, which was one of the biggest manufacturer. And I remember they send us packages and packages of how to build a website for local agency. We didn't have Wix or WordPress and so on. And that was like in the 2000. So it took us already up to date, took us 20 years to get now working website with some analytics, but they're not very good, social media tools, but still we're not fully kind of immersed in there, e-commerce platforms and so on. So it does take time, and it will not take your job, because again, it's just we need to reskill people or upskill them. So I would probably say embrace the revolution, embrace the transformation, because then you're just adding another things to your, to your, like a feature into your in your car or whatever. So think of it this way, because my own example, when I started, again, we only had offline event, trade shows, and so on. If I didn't embrace the technology and went onto a digital marketing course, and I did all this SEOs and all this details that started with digital, I would have been kind of, obsolete by now. So you see, and still, it's kind of, and now we're having these new tools like, kind of Midjourney and ChatGPT and EDL, and we can talk about it later. And they're just kind of helping instead of getting rid of my job. So this is kind of maybe my point of view on that.
I think it's encouraging, very encouraging statement. Thank you very much. And Doug, something has been said there about upskilling or reskilling. I mean, how does this impact on teaching at universities, this new revolution in particularly generative AI?
I mean, I think the impact is potentially very large, but it's one that is impacting us quite slowly in lots of ways. I think it's taking quite a long time to see the lay of the land. I think there's probably a general reluctance in higher education to rush in and say that we know what the answers are and what people need to know. But at the same time, I think we're very quickly recognizing that it's an important tool that is not going to go away. The box is open, and it's going to be integrated in increasingly large numbers of places. Whether we agree that it should be or not is a different question, but I think it will be. And look, in my school, we've been talking about artificial intelligence for the last 15 years. We've got entire degrees about artificial intelligence that have been sitting there for a very long time. So we've been talking about what it means to have artificial intelligence in our lives for a long time. We're now having to shift slightly towards what does it mean to have it so readily available. You know, the barriers to entry are now so low and being integrated in so many places. But I think, you know, it becomes another soft skill that runs alongside everything else for the most part, with occasional moments of highly specialist usage. Once we see it integrated into things like, you know, the Office suite and that kind of stuff, you almost won't know that you're using artificial intelligence. So then we're ensuring that people are skilled in using the standard suite of tools that they would usually be using, while aware that the things that are powering those tools might have changed. So I think as it becomes more integrated, it just becomes part of our everyday existence at the university anyway. I think there is a really important place for critical thinking and understanding of AI, and using that space at universities particularly to not necessarily teach just the soft skills, but to think, okay, where are its limits? Where should it go next? Where should it be integrated? Where shouldn't it be integrated? What jobs benefit? What jobs don't benefit? I mean, in terms of the jobs thing, I think it'd be great if we all lost our jobs because of AI. Every time a new technology comes round, people say this is the revolution we've been waiting for. 4-day week, 3-day week. The problem isn't the artificial intelligence. The problem is that no one will allow us to sustain our existence on a 3-day week. So, you know, if we had a world where we had things like universal basic income, then artificial intelligence losing all of our jobs would be an enormously wonderful thing. However, but that's a slightly different point, I guess. But yeah, it's a really important part of what we're doing at the university now. That's for sure.
Okay, thank you. Coming back to you, if I may, Yasmina. It occurs to me, I mean, I'm really kind of so pleased in a way to hear all of you saying that AI is effectively a tool. It's something that can augment what we do. It shouldn't mean that people will, you know, be out of work in a large scale way. It's great to hear that. But is it also the case that AI, or particularly the newer generative AI that's emerged, is that creating new opportunities, new careers, different kinds of jobs that maybe students coming from a university might look out for? Have you got any view on any new kinds of careers that are coming into being because of the revolution in AI that's brought AI to the public?
Absolutely. And I strongly believe that the next step for not only, you know, the university students, but every person who is out there in the workforce can be a creator, because that's the beauty of having tools that will help you do a lot of things, is that now we see it, social media with influencers or anyone who want to do something, they have Shopify, they have so many tools to help them do something, right? So they can be generating money without going into an employment or like the traditional one. And having this generative AIs, if you are like a gamer, I am a gamer and my kids are, so I know it's kind of bad, but on the other hand, what is great is that we have a lot of new tools that can help create a game within like less than I would probably say 2 weeks, where rather, you know, the AA, I'm not talking about the 3A's games, but the simple ones, sometimes you need to have the coding skills and so on. And this generative AI will help you create the context, the world, make, for example, the NPCs, the non-player character, you know, talk to each other or have their own narrative. And that will be new jobs in terms of content creations, in terms of, you know, designing things that we don't know yet that we're gonna need in that way. So that's kind of, it's like, again, I try to relate this to what I know better. In marketing, we used to have marketing manager, and that was it. You know how to do a leaflet, you have like a bit of understanding of artistic things, and that's it. Now you need to have an SEO person. SEO means the search optimization, so we can find you. Now we need to have a content creator. Now we need to have a social media manager. Now we need to have an influencer specialist. Now we need to have a website code, kind of web designer. So you see, out of one function, all this revolution, this digital revolution has created many jobs. So I'm sure that, within the next decade, with all these generative tools, we're going to have so much. I'll give you an example. In January, we created a pilot between ChatGPT and EDL, which was quite revolutionary at that time. We kind of plug them into a game, into a world of games, like a Fortnite one. And we did it hush-hush because it was not supposed to be official. And we put the EDL. So EDL is like ChatGPT, but it's from a different company, to make conversation to players. You see? So we started doing that. And then the OpenAI's guys and then the EDL staff were like, oh, that's a good idea. So we showed them and everything. And then they're like, so now we need someone to prompt this NPCs and the narrative. So now we need someone to think about creating a narrative, for all this NPCs, this non-player characters. So again, we have an open world for new jobs. If that's kind of that is my positive and my optimistic view on the topic.
So you can see a kind of a trend going forward that generative AI is going to lead to the creation of lots of different new opportunities for people in the world of work.
Absolutely. And beyond the generative AI, I think that at some point we're going to end up not only having generative, but also self-aware machines, because obviously it's going to happen at some point by all this methodology and all this knowledge that we know. It's going to kind of come up. And then we're going to need people to make sure that, in terms of regulation, in terms of, IP, so intellectual property. So you have so many things that we are not thinking right now because we're not in the challenging or the context that from my perspective, they will be opening jobs rather than losing jobs.
Okay, that's again very encouraging and very, very nice to hear as well. Thank you, Yasmina. Alberto, just sticking with that idea of trends or what might happen over the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see us in 5 or 10 years? Society, the world of work, where do you see that?
If I knew, right? So I mean, it's going to be interesting what the next 5 to 10 years are going to bring. There's a great book from Ray Kurzweil, which is called The Singularity is Near. It was written back in 2005. And practically the book nailed the last 18 years. If that book is the book that inspired me to kind of jump into this career and more or less forecast at this point in time the emergence of what we call today large language models, although he didn't call them in that way. If we basically take it as that's basically the Bible of what is going to happen. Kurzweil was predicting, I think there was artificial general intelligence with the computing power of the whole humanity, the 8 billion of us, by 2029. What is going to happen when you have something like that, right? When you have a brain with the computing power of 8 billion humans? Who knows? I think that society, governments, economies will have to think hard about how you're going to be structuring societies where there's not going to be what they call post-scarcity societies. Yeah, will they arrive in 5 years, in 10? Will they arrive in 20 years, in 30? It's difficult to say, but definitely if nothing seriously dramatic happens, nothing bad happens, that is probably where we are going. And I guess that when you start to kind of talk about those things, you need to jump into the science fiction realm, right? I'm a fan of science fiction myself. I'm a fan of among other things, Ian M. Banks' The Culture series, which is talking about a post-scarcity society, and all these topics are basically there. I'm not going to make any good justice to Ian M. Banks, so I would recommend people to read them. But the world is going to change quite a lot. It's going to be very difficult to recognize in the next in 20 years' time or in 10 years' time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Doug, just to round off on this section on experiences and definitions and where we think everything's going, what would you say about trends in education? How do you see over the next 5 years? What do you see happening in higher education? How's it going to be different?
I think it's going to be extremely different. I think it's difficult to predict it. But what I would say is that it's a very human thing to spend our time trying to surpass the limits of what it is to be human. And for all of time, this is what humans have tried to do, is to try and create things and create versions of themselves that are better than what a human is. And these universities are places where these kinds of innovations are happening and should be happening. I was thinking of the old Greek myth of Icarus, but I think the wings are working and the wax isn't melting, and we're flying around in a way that we've got.
Oh, I think we've lost Doug. Yasmin, got you back. We lost you for a moment there, Doug.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I think university is playing a hugely important role in ensuring that we are heading in the right direction with all of these things and continue to surpass human limits, but in a way that doesn't then limit humans.
That's a very good way of putting it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you. I'm going to move us on to a slightly different, to the second theme, really, of the discussion. It's about practical skills, tips and advice. And I'm going to ask you each in turn. Maybe I'll stick with you, Doug, if that's okay. So are there any particular kinds of resources or ways in which you've engaged with what's been happening over the last 6 or 7 months that have helped you to learn or decide how to use AI in your current role?
I think one of the big things is to just play with it. There's so many things out there. It's extraordinarily predictable how quickly the paywalls have started to go up around these tools, and that a lot of them that were free 6 months ago are now charging small amounts, and maybe that's fine, maybe that's not. It makes it harder to just experiment with some of them, though. But just playing around with them and seeing what they do and don't do, and what their limits and non-limits are, I think is something that we probably all should be thinking about doing. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to enjoy what we discover they do. It doesn't mean we have to worship the machine. It means that we're playing with it so we know what it does. But I also think that there's a lot of space for examining how other people are using it and watching a little bit. I think it's okay to sit back and say, okay, that organization's using it. What happens when they use it? What happens when they don't use it? How's this changing things? And so many sectors are using it already. I mean, I worked on a big project this summer reviewing how the UN Organization for Humanitarian Affairs was using AI to do predictive modeling on humanitarian risk, and very interesting to look at how they were planning to use it. Significant failings in their modeling, but interesting how they're using it. So I think looking at how other people using it and playing around with it yourself is a really important thing for us all to be doing, really.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think Alberto, you mentioned at the beginning in your answer to one of the other questions that about playing around with it and discovering what it can do. If Alberto, if I could ask you, if somebody who's in the audience right now who has not engaged with a generative AI tool at all, beyond suggesting they play with it, do you have any other kind of resources you could suggest to people where they could find out more about generative AI?
Yeah, of course. So I guess that it's quite interesting, right? Because when I was doing the master in data mining, the only place where you could really learn this stuff was in the university. It was the only place. And a few years later, suddenly all these amount of content start to emerge in internet. And right now, there's plenty of websites, I would say. My favorites, right? I would say that what deeplearning.ai is the sort of courses that deeplearning.ai are throwing into the website are very good. In some of them, there are courses that can be done in 4 or 5 hours. Some of them are for people with a bit of technical background, in Python especially. Others are more just basically very high-level view and just basically get a bit of experience with prompt engineering, or they explain how these models work, so you get a bit of context about why certain things work and why others not. For those ones with more technical knowledge and people that may have a computer science background, I think that the field is moving on a daily basis, and this is not exaggeration. There's a lot of things happening, and whatever I recommend today might be all next week. But right now, if you have a good computer, either experiment with Copilot in your computer, or just basically build these models on your own. There's something that just came very recently, LM Studio, that allows you to basically run in your computer locally in the models. And then in YouTube, there's a lot of fantastic content, right? I'm a fan of Andrei Karpathy. He's a very famous ML researcher. He was responsible for Tesla Autopilot. He was working on OpenAI before that, and he came back now to OpenAI. And he has a few videos there for technical people, perhaps, where he just basically builds GPT from scratch, but a very old version, right? So if you have technical background and you want to build the old versions of GPT, just go ahead. I will add other stuff into the when we send the email to everybody.
Okay, thank you. And Yasmina, is there anything from your perspective you could add in terms of if somebody, say, interested in marketing, for example, who hasn't actually engaged much with generative AI, what they could actually do to find out how marketers are using or starting to use generative AI?
I'll probably say recommend to any student from a marketing or sales or financial I would probably say jobs is to go and do internship, because despite the fact that we think that generative AI and all these tools are well used in a lot of companies, it's not really the case. You see, so we can, I can't remember which survey has proved that CRM system, which has the basic things for any company, for example, to track their sales, leads, and so on, they are only used to a capacity of 70%, which means that we have a long way to go for them to kind of implement them. And from a practical point of view, I think that the students who want to have a bit of kind of flavors, they are I would probably say two approach: working with AI or working for AI. So the working with AI is try to focus on what do you want to do with AI? Do you want to be into creative? Do you want to do podcasting? So there are like now a lot of tools available online, and choose which one you want to start with, get a sense of it, and then look what are the companies who are using such things or are they in the industry of this kind of tools. So what you can do is kind of intern with them to see how they're using it, or maybe they're using something different. So that gives you a sense of the implementation side and feedbacks, you see, because all these tools are still new. On the other hand, when I said working for AI means that you go and search companies who are developing AI tools. So that's another matter, and this is more like a different approach. And you go and you approach them and you choose again. Try not to be very generic, because it doesn't really help. We like to have people who are interning, who have done their homework, who want to go into this because they have an interest or passion or something, that they want to achieve. And that is maybe a little bit helpful in terms of getting your hands, in terms of experience, getting hands-on on the stuff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that very much. I've got on my list of questions to ask you all, how did you end up using AI in your current roles. But I think you all kind of have answered that already. So I have another question that I'm going to slip in at the end, which has just popped into my head. But before I do that, could I ask, I could start with you, Yasmina, if that's okay. Could I ask you for one piece of advice you would give to anyone thinking of exploring how generative AI may specifically be of use to them? And we've already heard about play with it, right? That's an important piece of advice. Can you think of, and you've talked a bit there about try to find an internship, for example, but anything else you can think of, a single piece of advice?
Well, to be honest, I think that kind of goes back to the question of how we started ourselves, right? Because that also led to a career, to a pathway, and so on. So I would probably say that my passion for gaming, gamification, took me one step further every time to not only sit and wait, but really explore. So in terms of opening my mind to all the things happening, checking what's going on in terms of the tools, anything that is kind of new, I will be like checking it and going there. I'm like, oh, wow. And ask questions, sometimes read books. And, sometimes it's good to be ahead of the curve, because that's what we call early adopters. Early adopters will be the one who are looking, and they will be kind of exploring, which means that you're trying to nurture yourself. Because then once you start exploring and nurturing yourself, it's like, maybe I'll use the metaphor of cooking. You will start cooking something, and obviously you just want to prepare dinner. And it's the same for AI. So you go for pizza, pasta, and all this kind of recipe. But at some point, you're going to repeat the same thing because you like it, right? So that's where this is your niche. This is where your passion should be. It is in this part of this pizza or the pasta or the curry, whatever. And that instinctively need to be going and delve into it, which means that you can go further down and even, take courses or just ask for mentoring from people in this particular field, because that means that you can create something for yourself there, because there is so much to explore that we can't just sit and wait or say, oh yeah, it's going to kind of rain on me. So it depends. You can be the early adopter, or you can be the mass who are just waiting and getting this through the next job they're getting, and then they get, oh, you need to know X, Y, Z, you need to know this kind of tools, and you kind of have to go through this. So this is maybe my addition to the question.
Okay, thank you. And Alberto, anything that you can think additional, single piece of advice to people who perhaps haven't really engaged with generative AI so far?
Yeah, I guess that to add in there is you need to feel that you are out of your comfort zone. That's it's not just for generative AI. I think that is a principle for growth, and that always, in my opinion, end up well. So it's very difficult to kind of create a generic advice for all the different domains that we could have, represented here in this call. So I would say, yeah, obviously play with it, but get out of your comfort zone and follow your things that you're interested in. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Okay, thank you. Doug, I won't ask you the same question because you kind of came up with the, Alberto did first, but then you also re-emphasized how playing with it, and we've heard that, get out there and try and use this stuff, just try it and see what it can do. So before we move on to the questions that the audience have put into the chat, I have got one question to ask each of you, and it can be quite a short answer, although not as short as yes or no, but I wanted to ask you each in turn, and Alberto, you're in front of me. Is generative AI, in your view, overhyped?
No, I think that perhaps I'm biased. It has changed my life, not just at work, the sort of things that we were able to do. And before I left BMO2, and this was published in the tech blog that we had in there, we start to basically make massive impacts on the call center, and in the generation of leads and hyper personalized emails and things like that. Personally, I use it on a day-to-day basis, and to be honest, all the ideas that I have about how to use it, I don't have time to explore them. It is really impressive. I think that there are many many fields in which you can apply it. So I don't think that is overhype. I think that these things are going to change for good.
Thank you. And Yasmina?
Okay, it's totally opposite, and I'm sorry, because for me, working in the innovation industry, I would say that we overhyped because we need money. So, last year was the metaverse, the year before was NFT, and the year before was like crypto. And every year we have to hype because obviously startups, this is a marketing cycle. You have to hype an industry, even sometimes if we're not ready, because we need to say, oh, look at this, it's amazing, we're going to throw money into it. I'll give you a very simple example, and I know I'm kind of taking a little bit of time. I worked for a version of a chat GTP for, Australian government in 2020. So this is how much they were early. They never talked about it because it was something that they needed for RFPs and stuff like that. So but we didn't hype it, and it did the job. But because OpenAI were going to raise funding, obviously they needed to hype things. And it doesn't work that much. And it's not that great. They need to bring money because they have stakeholders asking for, a business, return on investment. But I would probably say that we're still a long way, like metaverse, augmented reality. We need to bring money. Just think of it as we like doing a little bit of, PR, and then you're going to see us building, in the deep. And one day you will be like, oh, I'm using it, without really realizing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Very interesting contrasting views there to some extent. And Doug, what about you? What's your view? Is it overhyped?
Yes and no. I think, it's a very good marketing tool to say that AI is so powerful it's going to kill us all. Ironically, though, it is a marketing tool because it suggests that something is much more powerful than it is. AI is not all that powerful in many ways. We know it's not achieving a lot of the things that were claimed that it would achieve. And being, to use a university example, being told that AI can pass a university exam simply means the exam's badly written, not that the AI is very good. So what are we benchmarking AI against? Well, we're potentially benchmarking it against things that it can do because we designed the thing badly. So there's a bit of an overhype there. But having said that, we're at the beginning of a journey with artificial intelligence, a journey that, we've been at the beginning of for 10, 15 years at least, but has now become much more in the public domain. I think there is a certain amount of hyping in order to sell things. A lot of the AI companies, ChatGTP and these people are absolutely hemorrhaging money at the moment. So they need to get everybody on board in order for other people to start investing. So we do have to hype it. At the same time, it is growing very, very rapidly in what can be achieved. And so maybe some of that hype is justified in a way that crypto, I think most of us saw that should never have been hyped right from day one. I think we saw right through that one. It doesn't feel quite the same space with artificial intelligence kinds of things, which has been sitting around for a little bit longer and has a longer legacy of people working on it and thinking critically about it and researching on it than crypto.
Okay, so what I'm hearing perhaps is that there's huge potential here. Some people are reaping that potential in perhaps their own unique ways, but there's a little bit of overkill in respect of what some people are saying that generative AI may achieve in a fairly short space of time. So thank you, panel, for those set questions that we've gone through. I need to move us over now to the questions that have come in from the audience, and the first one that I see on the shared document I've got here in front of me kind of links to that the hype thing. It's about the future of AI. Have you, any of you, and I'll call for volunteers, have you any thoughts on the alignment problem? Okay, do you think open sourcing models and development will be net harmful or helpful for alignment? Any views on that from anybody? Alberto?
Yeah. So, this is basically the big division that exists in the AI field right now. The whole drama about OpenAI that we had last week is at the core, seems to kind of have this issue. That you have the doomers, which basically said everything's going to finish, and we need to be really, really very careful because this might be our last invention. And they are then the view of those ones that they don't see these things as very, very big matrices. And that, the AI alignment problem or this thing becoming alive is not really something that we should be debating. And they are very concerned about research actually stopping because of this. It's difficult to kind of place yourself in one side or on another. From my perspective, I think that we need to think that humans in the past have solved problems in a different way in which nature solved them. So if you look at planes, they don't flap the wings, and or at least the first versions, right? And basically the fact that nature solved how to fly through flapping wings, and we did it through a internal combustion engine and basically rotating a propeller and things like that, we just achieved the same outcome, which was to fly. I think that in here we need to be careful with consciousness and intelligence and not confusing both. And I think that what we are solving is intelligence, and what we see in the next 5, 10 years, 15, 20 is that intelligence is going to be solved from a technical point of view, and we're going to have machines that are going to be 10, 100, 1,000 times more intelligent than any human or bunch of humans. Will they be conscious? I think this is where nature solved the problem in a different way, and this is where everything is coming from. Now, do you want to have very intelligent machine that is not conscious and still kind of ruining humanity? Well, that's the paperclip problem, right? That they say we could end up kind of, paperclip self-replicator machine that end up kind of converting the whole universe into paperclips. So, yeah, we need to be careful. I think that research is really important. I think that every research team that is working in these advanced large language models needs to keep an eye on this stuff. Things have changed a lot, like never in the last 12 months. This is a field that has decades. This is not Bitcoin, right? So artificial intelligence started really in the 60s, 70s. And there's a lot of amazing academics doing advances by the day. So yes, we need to be careful.
So I guess you'd be a big supporter of the idea that there should be more funding going into researching AI safety.
Yes, of course. I think that even government should put funding for this. Yes, the big companies are going to be putting funding on this stuff, but right now where all the money is going is on just keeping the field advancing, right? I don't think that is really required stopping it, but yes, obviously we need to be careful. And now remember, you were asking about open source models. My answer depends a bit on the day that you ask me. I think that open source models are really valuable. I think that it's good that these technologies are not in the hands of just a few companies. And this, what we're going to see is that these GPT-4's level of performance are going to be running in our phones locally in the phone in 3 years' time, right? So we are all going to have a GPT-4. We're going to be talking to it like if it was, a human. Fantastic movie I recommend for everybody. Hair from Joaquin Phoenix, and just to kind of see what is coming. But yes, we're going to have all that stuff, and I think that open source models are really required for that. Yeah.
I suspect Apple might be hoping it's sooner than 3 years.
Well, you can do it if you have the paid version of OpenAI. You can do it right now. So I have one, and you can talk to it, and then replies back and stuff. But as a commodity for everybody, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I'm conscious of the fact, Yasmina, you need to go, don't you, at 7:40, I believe. And I've seen a question here that I feel that you might be really good at giving a very positive answer to. So the question is, do you feel like in order to work in artificial intelligence, you need a background in computer science or something similar? Or is it possible to work in this sector with other more diverse degrees?
I would say you don't, unless you want to code something. I'm not an engineer myself, but I translate the language to the masses. Let's put it this way. So working in AI or working with AI means that we need to have a team around it. Think of it as a hospital again. I love giving metaphors to simplify things, but think of it as a hospital or a kitchen. You have the chef, and then you have the people who are helping, the waitress, and the waiters and the bartenders, the person who is seating people. So all of these people know the restaurant business. They know if we have rush, they need to kind of compile things, or whatever things have to be done, they will do them. And it's the same in a company that you're working for AI. So I work for companies who are, developing AIs for different industries today. And I don't know anything about it. I'm good at statistics, I'm good at understanding the data, but I do not code myself, so I don't have anything around that. But what I'm good at is understanding a business model around it, how to position it, how to do partnership with other people to plug things around. And that's also very valuable skill that the new student can come and see it as like, oh, okay, then I don't need this kind of, experience or engineering or degrees. I just need to kind of, open my head or my brain to that and my mind and jump into it and have a leap of faith.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Let me come to you, Doug. I know I said earlier on that I was going to call for volunteers for these questions, but now I'm picking on people, so I'm going to pick on you for this one. What do you think are the most important things for everyone to learn, regardless of their field?
The most important what to learn, sorry?
What are the most important things for everyone to learn, regardless of their field? I guess the connected question is, what baseline knowledge about AI do you think society should have?
I suspect that there's nobody here who knows how their mobile phone works. And I suspect there's an awful lot of people here who have an Apple phone precisely because Apple have spent an extraordinarily large amount of time ensuring nobody knows how their phone works. The whole user interface is designed to entirely mask what's happening underneath the surface. And I see this in my teaching quite often. The idea of using URLs and folders and archiving documents and things on a computer, second nature to me as someone who used to use floppy disks. It's not second nature to a lot of students who come into the university who are very cloud-based and this kind of thing. So I don't think that everybody in the world needs to know how the AI works. I'm not sure that that's necessarily what we all need to know. What we do need to know is who's developing it and what means that they're developing it through and why they're developing it. So we don't need to know how Facebook works, but it's useful for us to know that Facebook is essentially an advertising platform. We don't need to know how Google Maps works, but it's important for us to know that Google Maps makes its money from collecting our data. So I don't think we need to know how it works, but I think we need to know why we are being allowed to use it, particularly when we're being allowed to use it for free, and what the intentions of the companies are. That, of course, is quite difficult things to find out, but I think that's the key piece of information that we should be interested in order to get the most out of AI without necessarily large tech companies exploiting us as users rather than us exploiting the tools. It's a very pessimistic sounding thing, but there's nothing wrong with knowing why someone's created something and then making an informed decision about whether to use it or not.
Yeah, very fair point. Very fair point. Okay, I have a question here. I'm not sure who would be best to have a go at this one, but if anyone wants to volunteer, let me read it out first because you can't see it. If you were once in my position, this is the question, if you're once in my position as a software engineering student aspiring to become an AI developer, what steps or strategies would you have taken to get actively involved and ultimately become successful in the field? Are there specific actions, resources, or experiences you believe would have accelerated your journey towards becoming a proficient AI developer? That's a very long question. Shall I repeat it? I will. If you were once in my position as a software engineering student aspiring to become an AI developer, what steps or strategies would you have taken to get actively involved and ultimately become successful in the field? Yasmina, thank you.
I would answer with two things. The first one is to list all the hackathons happening around in any campuses. So that, because you kind of come across with companies, startups, experts, so that's very important. And the second part is beyond the hackathons, you also have all this technology summit, so AI summits, tech summits, fintech summits, and you have a lot of AI experts coming there doing workshops, doing talks, and you have companies there. So if you want to start, knowing more, go out there like in a jungle and figure out what's going on, because that will give you a benchmark of what the reality versus what is in your head and what you're studying, because there is always like a bit of a gap between academic and the real world sometimes. So that would be your first step, and once you're there, you will discover what who you connect to, make connections, and then that opens up to new doors. So that's kind of my tip on this question.
Thank you very much. And Yasmina, I know that you have got to go at 7:40, haven't you? Is that right? Is that correct?
Yes.
So do leave when you wish to, and with my thanks for a remarkably enthusiastic and I think quite inspiring set of answers to some quite tricky, difficult questions.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Yes. Okay, so everybody else, I'm not closing the meeting yet. If that's okay, Alberto and Doug, there are still a few questions to answer.
If I may add to the question from the person, right? So
please do.
I had a team of 60 data scientists in Virgin Media O2. I think that what I have seen after more than 10 years, more than 15 years playing in the field, is that at least as of today, having an MSc and you really want to be on the edge, having a PhD is still giving you quite a lot. You still may be doing, great MSCs and have a lot of experience and have a lot of kind of parallel activities outside your academic formation and might kind of get you there. So I think a PhD is required. But right now, you really want to be an AI developer. And what I mean by that is really working on cutting edge stuff, whatever that means in the future. And not just basically any recommender that is going to be plugged into recommending your next dish like in Just Eat or things like that, which are going to be pretty trivial to build. I would say that yeah, you need your MSc, you need probably your PhD, depending on which field you want to go. And I would say that if right now there is a lot of resources that you should be tapping. There's a lot of great content of people that are replicating things that cutting edge labs are doing in a smaller scale. They're amazing. There's an amazing amount of GitHub repositories that you can go and just basically look at how things are working, replicate same cool products in your machine, and really kind of get how these things are working is going to be super important.
Thank you. And a follow-up question that I feel sure is probably best for you, Alberto, is what is the most popular programming language for AI development? I instinctively want to say Python, but that's based on no great understanding or knowledge. Is it Python or is it something else?
Python is what everybody is using as a way to create models or interact, right? So when you look at how certain things may be built for these big large language models, I think that probably would be using C. But yeah, Python is what everybody is using today, and there are a lot of developments in the Python ecosystem that are allowing the flaws that the language had in the past, which were speed was mainly one of those, to be solved. So it seems to be the language that everybody can use to do almost anything. It's not the best at every topic, but that's why everybody's using it. So yeah, Python I would recommend if you really want to kind of be technical on it. Yeah.
And continuing with you, if I may, Alberto, the question here is, how many AI platforms are there? All I know about is ChatGPT, which I think is more of an application on a platform, but I may have that wrong because I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't background as you. So how many AI platforms are there? All I know about is ChatGPT, and are there any differences or similarities between them?
Yeah. So what we know, ChatGPT is basically an application that provides the outputs for large language models, right? So AI is more than ChatGPT. So large language models are basically a small end of a branch of the whole ecosystem of techniques that are being used in different areas. Now, it's the one that's making noise right now. Yes, fine. And if we're talking about large language models or generative AI, you need to kind of distinguish then on text generation, image generation, now voices as well, and things like that. So there are different models, different products out there that are better or worse at different things. For example, you look at voice, you have 11 Labs. If you look at chat language generation, yes, you have the OpenAI models, but as well they do voice models and image generation. If you look at just image generation, you have Stable Diffusion. Then from OpenAI a few years ago, Anthropic kind of split out and they have their own platform. Then if you go to Hugging Face, is basically the place where you can find all the open source models. And if you work in a company, you are going to have some sort of cloud support that is going to be sitting in either AWS or either in Azure or in Google Cloud. And in it, you're going to have not only the proprietary models from the likes of Google, Microsoft would have ChatGPT, and Amazon, don't know what it will have, but as well the open source one. So in these cloud providers, they're now giving what they call the model garden. For example, in Google Cloud, they have something that is the model garden, and you have all the different models in there. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if you have, I don't know, an ecosystem, 10, 20 things right now that are just out there. And I think that what everybody needs to keep an open eye is on if OpenAI, and they haven't been the first one, there's another 2 companies out there that are doing the same, but I don't remember their names, are going to be releasing now the GPT store, or that is what they a couple of weeks ago. And you're going to see a lot of different GPTs that have been tweaked by anybody with technical knowledge or without technical knowledge. Right now, you don't know how to code a line of code. You can go to a platform.openai.com and you can tweak a GPT-4 Turbo version for whatever purpose you want to kind of give to it. And you can provide files, and you can provide functions, and you can provide different things that would allow it to do things that the normal GPT-4 cannot do, or do things with a particular flavor, right? Be funny about this or things like that, right? So that is going to be like the App Store was in 2007. I think we're going to have this thing offered by many people pretty soon.
Okay, thank you. Doug, I've got one I'd like to throw your way because it mentions students and studies. Would you be able to provide a few examples of AI platforms or models that students can use during their studies?
Yeah, I mean, institution to institution will be different. So if you find yourself at another institution that's not Westminster, then you would want to be checking what they're going with. I think most universities, Westminster included, are being quite pragmatic about which tools can and can't be used. And I think there's an awful lot of work that's going on to make sure that we're taking that little bit of having to check whether a tool is decent or not out of the mix. So, at Westminster, things like Grammarly with its AI has been rolled out, and that's a very legitimate thing to use. Once we start seeing students using things that are outside of our own ecosystem, where you haven't got to sign in with your university credentials, then that may provide some very good tools, but it also may find yourself using tools that are perhaps not really quite appropriately designed for what you're doing, or that fall outside of the university's rules and regulations. So, Grammarly at Westminster, when AI starts coming more into Microsoft Office, that kind of stuff gets turned on. So in terms of what AI is to be using while you're a student, I think the guidance that the university is offering and making sure that you're aware of that is the key thing. Because if you go into a company as well, they'll tell you which AI tools that they're happy for you to use and which ones they're not. So it's exactly the same in the university. These are the ones we use for this job. These are the ones we don't use. And I think, you know, that's emulated in the workplace as well.
Thank you, Doug. There is a question here, Alberto, I'm going to ask you to speak to. I mean, you've actually spoken about this previously in an earlier question, but I feel it might be good just to repeat some of what you said, but maybe there'll be some things you could add. So the question is, what's your AI development timeline? Where do you see AI capabilities being in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? What do you think the limits are? And I appreciate you have already given answers that relate to that question. But perhaps
AI is a very broad term. So I think that we cannot underestimate the impact of this, the compounding impact of all the different things that are happening on a field that has tens of thousands of researchers right now, from different universities across the globe. So I guess that the question is what our world would look like. Let me rephrase that: in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. So in 5 years, AI is going to be in any business because, you know, the likes of Microsoft in the 365 package and the likes of Google in their suite packages, you know, they are going to provide that thing. They are providing that thing now. So I think that any office worker or any work in general, that doesn't matter whether you're exposed to office or not, you're going to be exposed to AI tools because the business will need them to increase the productivity of the business itself. But I think that it will be more present in terms of our day-to-day. I think that this effort is analogous to try to kind of explain to everybody in 2004 what would be the mobile phone revolution, right? But not the mobile phones that were understood in 2004 or the ones when everybody was going around, or some people were going around with the BlackBerry. How you explain apps, how you explain that you're going to be doing everything on the phone, how you're going to explain that you're going to be watching BBC on your phone. Your car will drive on its own. This happening now is not really that far. You will talk to your phone, and it will be normal that it understands everything. It's not going to be when you talk with Siri or with Alexa that what you say. That's going to be seamless. The kids are going to be jumping into this this magic from the very beginning, right? They will be the first ones that will understand that AI is there. I think that the possibilities in terms of creating new stuff, creating new tools are going to be impressive. In terms of science, I think this is where DeepMind is kind of pointing more rather than kind of OpenAI on the B2C side. It's going to be, I think that science is going to be changed drastically. Our ability to iterate and going and understanding more how the world behaves and expanding our frontier of human knowledge is going to be severely impacted, right? By all these things that are being built at the moment. I think we are just at the beginning. We'll see advances in genomics, in nanotechnology, AI kind of helping to kind of push these things. I think that our health will increase massively. There's a lot of people there that says that, and all these things that I'm talking about, Ray Kurzweil book, The Singularity is Near, talk about it in that stuff. We have Neuralink there coming. The human trials are starting right now. So are we going to be thinking with part of our digital brains that we won't even see 15 years time, right? All those we are going to have. There's a fantastic book that's called Exponential from Asim Azar, which talks about this compounding effect, right? I am an optimist in terms of climate change. I think that we're kind of going the wrong direction with climate change, but I do think that AI and the efforts that many scientists and researchers and companies are doing will start to kind of change everything and move the needle. But we will need AI to kind of make this impact. So it's kind of a rush exercise trying to kind of predict the future, a topic that I love, but I would recommend a lot, a few books out there for people to kind of that have done this exercise much better than me.
It is a very exciting time, but at the same time, it's in partly because I guess predicting the future is always a bit tricky. Beyond perhaps tomorrow, it also can be quite scary, I think, to everybody and anybody really. It all feels a bit like too much, and I think we heard earlier on from Yasmina how people instinctively quite often will think about Skynet and Arnold Schwarzenegger and that kind of stuff, and that to some extent can actually kind of make their view of what could happen in a positive way perhaps be a little bit distorted. But I think what you've just said is probably a good way to end this evening. We haven't been able to answer all the questions, but we are up to time. So I just want to say very big thank you to you, Alberto, and I also have to say thank you to Doug, even though he knows I wouldn't normally say thank you to Doug. But thank you very much, Doug, for your contributions as well. Thank you, Alberto. I just want to remind anybody in the audience to complete a survey. I think that's been added to the chat, or there it is. It's appeared in the chat. If you could complete that survey, it'll also be in the follow-up email. Just to say this is the last What It Takes event for semester 1 in this academic year. There will be more coming in the new year, so please keep a lookout in your email inbox and also on the homepage for announcements. Again, thank you both very much indeed. Have a very good evening, and everybody else have a very good evening. Do take care. Bye bye now.